Have you ever stopped to think about how we built one of the most powerful technologies on the planet? The inspiration wasn't found on a silicon chip or in some complex line of code. No, it was found right here, inside our own heads. The story is pretty incredible. So let's get into the power and the price of AI.
What you're looking at are actual biological neurons. These little guys are the building blocks of the human brain. We have something like 100 billion of them, all firing and talking to each other to create every single thought, feeling, and action we have. And it was this amazing biological network that the first AI pioneers tried to copy.
So here was the big question. Could engineers actually create a mathematical version of a neuron? Could they bottle that magic of receiving signals, thinking about them, and then deciding whether or not to pass a message along?
Okay, check this out. It's a perfect side-by-side. On the left, you've got the real deal, the biological neuron. See those little branches, the dendrites? They receive signals. And that long tail, the axon, sends signals out. And then on the right, you have its digital cousin, the perceptron. It's got inputs that work kind of like dendrites, and an output that works just like an axon. A perfect little echo.
Think of a single perceptron as a really, really simple decision maker. It's basically just a light switch. It gets a bunch of signals coming in, those are the inputs, and each signal has a different level of importance, which we call a weight. If the total combined signal is strong enough to cross a certain line, a threshold, click, the switch flips, and the neuron fires off its own signal. Simple as that.
But, and this is a big but, there was a catch. This super simple model had a famous flaw. A single perceptron can only draw a straight line to divide information. And because of that, it couldn't solve a really simple logic puzzle called the XOR problem. This was a huge roadblock. For a while, it made it seem like these artificial neurons were just, well, not that
Turns out, the solution wasn't to build a better neuron. It was to connect them. Just like in our own brains, the real power wasn't in the individual cell, but in the network. Once they started linking these simple perceptrons together into layers, suddenly they could tackle way more complex problems, including that pesky XOR puzzle that had everyone stumped.
In this idea, this simple concept of connecting neurons into layers, well, it unlocks something truly mind-bending. It takes these simple little light switches and turns them into a tool with almost unbelievable power.
This right here is the universal approximation theorem. And honestly, it is a profound, almost philosophical statement. What it means is that in theory, a neural network with just one hidden layer of these neurons can learn to copy or approximate any continuous function. It doesn't matter how wild or complex it is. It's basically a universal pattern matching machine.
So let's actually see how this works. Imagine we want to teach a machine to draw this complicated squiggly line here. At first glance, it seems impossible, right? How could a bunch of on-off switches possibly recreate something so nuanced?
Well, here's the clever trick. A network can use just two of its neurons to create a super simple shape, a single rectangular block or a bin. And we can control everything about that block, where it sits, how wide it is, and how tall it is. And this is where it all comes together. By adding more pairs of neurons, we can just keep adding more of these simple blocks. We stack them side by side, we tweak their heights, and we essentially build a staircase that gets closer and closer and closer to that original squiggly line. With enough neurons, we can get ridiculously close to a perfect copy.
I mean, the ability to approximate pretty much anything is an incredible superpower. But a tool this powerful, a tool that learns from data from our messy, complicated, imperfect world, well, it raises some really serious questions, doesn't it?
Because when these powerful learning machines are let loose in the real world, they don't just learn useful patterns. They also learn our hidden biases, our societal blind spots, and that creates some major ethical minefields. And this brings us right to the heart of the problem, algorithmic bias. An AI model is only as smart as the data you feed it. So if that data reflects historical prejudice, say biased hiring data from decades ago, the AI won't just learn that bias. It can actually amplify it, making unfair decisions on a massive automated scale.
The list of ethical worries is, well, it's long. We're talking about bias and discrimination, for sure, but also massive privacy violations and the whole black box problem, where we often have no idea how the AI is making its decisions. That makes it really hard to figure out who's accountable when things go wrong. And let's be super clear here. These are not just abstract what-if scenarios. AI is already being used right now to make high-stakes decisions that affect people's lives every single day. Let's start with a big one, facial recognition.
This technology is being rolled out everywhere for security and law enforcement.
But here's the thing. Study after study has shown these systems are way less accurate for women and people with darker skin. And this isn't some small statistical glitch. It creates a very real risk of misidentification, of false arrests, and the scary potential for discriminatory, targeted surveillance.
And this problem is everywhere. I mean, just look at this table. In credit scoring, some algorithms have penalized people just for living in certain neighborhoods. In policing, they can end up reinforcing old biases by sending more officers to already over-policed communities. And in healthcare, models trained on biased data can actually make existing health disparities even worse.
But on top of all the ethical questions, there's another cost, one that's usually completely hidden from view. There is a very, very real environmental price tag.
The sheer amount of computing power needed for high-end AI research is just exploding. I want you to let this number sink in. Between 2012 and 2018, the amount of computer power used in the biggest AI projects increased by 300,000 times. No, that is not a typo. And all of that computing takes a truly massive amount of energy.
So what does that energy use actually look like? Well, one study figured out that training just a single large AI language model can churn out around 600 kilograms of CO2 emissions.
To put that into perspective for you, that is roughly the same carbon footprint as one person flying round trip from New York to San Francisco. And remember, that's just for training one model one time.
So here we are. We've created a technology inspired by our own brains that has the power to learn just about anything. But we're seeing its power comes with a serious price, a price measured in fairness, in accountability, and in carbon. Which leaves us with maybe the most important question we can ask. With machines that can learn anything, what are the things we should actually be